Nobody expected Caitlin Clark's biggest WNBA challenge to have so little to do with basketball itself. Not a rivalry, not officiating, not locker room tension. Instead, the growing concern around Clark may be something even more serious: her body. And now, one of the most respected performance minds in basketball is raising real questions about what's happening behind the scenes. Because according to Tim Grover, the legendary trainer known for working with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Dwyane Wade, this may not be just a short-term injury story. It may be a warning sign. When Grover sat down on the Crossover podcast in January 2026, he steered clear of the standard media circus. The conversation bypassed the usual debates over referee whistles, rivalries, and locker room chatter. Instead, Grover focused on the cold reality of how a high-output athlete moves, warning of what he termed domino injuries. This represents a pattern-based observation from a trainer who spent decades working with the game's most durable stars, distinct from a formal clinical diagnosis. The warning centers on a kinetic chain under immense stress. When one link is compromised, the next is immediately exposed to abnormal forces. What the public sees as an isolated strain can actually be the first tile to fall in a cascading series of soft tissue issues. If the body fails to adapt to these compounding demands, the athlete is no longer just rehabbing. They are waiting for the next domino to fall. This physical reality, far more than any on-court drama, is what will define the future. When Indiana selected Clark as the first overall pick in 2024, she wasn't just joining a roster. She was anchoring an entire sports economy. Almost immediately, arenas sold out. Television ratings reached historic heights, and merchandise demand spiked nationwide. She was the focal point of a massive cultural moment, tasked with carrying the visibility, ticket sales, and momentum of an entire league on her shoulders. This massive commercial footprint meant her physical availability was no longer a private medical concern, but a primary business variable. For the franchise and the league, her presence on the floor directly dictates ticket sales and broadcast ratings. When a player carrying this level of financial and symbolic weight faces physical setbacks, the pressure to accelerate recovery is intense. The timeline for return is no longer just a medical decision discussed in quiet training rooms. It is contested by broadcasters, corporate sponsors, and arena operators. Every recovery plan carries immediate, high-stakes consequences for the business ecosystem. Under this pressure, does the institutional system around her prioritize long-term structural readiness, or does the urgency of the moment create avoidable risks? Grover's warning focuses on a physiological gap in athletic development, the mismatch between building raw muscle and training the nervous system to handle it. When an athlete transitions to the professional level, the immediate training response is often to increase physical strength. Yet muscle mass accumulates far faster than the surrounding support systems can adapt. While a player's frame might appear stronger in a matter of weeks, the core stabilizing muscles, the connective fascia, and the joint structures take much longer to remodel. This developmental gap disrupts neuromuscular timing, the precise split-second coordination that tells specific muscles when to fire to protect a joint during sudden stops and turns. When an athlete adds power, without this internal structural alignment, the body essentially runs a high-output engine on a fragile chassis. This physiological reality operates entirely apart from a player's work ethic, competitive drive, or tolerance for pain. The situation exposes the distinction between being medically cleared to play and being structurally prepared for long-term stress. Passing a standard strength test or resting until a strain heals does not mean the entire kinetic chain is ready to absorb cumulative forces over a long season. True durability requires the body's internal coordination to be fully synchronized, safeguarding the joints before they are subjected to the continuous demands of professional competition. On May 26, 2025, the Indiana Fever announced that Clark had suffered a left quadriceps strain, forcing a 3-week layoff. Shortly after her return in June, a left groin strain sidelined her for another 2 weeks. Then, during a July 15th game against Connecticut, a right groin setback ended her season entirely, limiting her to just 13 games. This sequence provides a visible map of a compounding compensation cycle. When a left quad is compromised, the body alters its mechanics to protect the injured area, shifting the load directly onto the surrounding adductors. As the left groin overcompensates and fatigues, the kinetic stress transfers across the pelvic cradle to the opposite side, placing abnormal lateral forces on the right groin. This regional instability reveals a system under continuous structural strain, where each successive injury becomes the logical physical consequence of the last. This structural vulnerability is tested on every possession by the physical demands of Clark's playing style. Clark is far from a stationary shooter. Her impact relies on constant, high-velocity movement, requiring her to decelerate from a full sprint to a complete stop in a fraction of a second. Every step-back jumper, sudden crossover, and sharp lateral cut forces her hips, groin, quads, and lower body stabilizers to absorb massive ground reaction forces. This physical toll accumulates through repetitive, high-impact braking rather than a single hard collision. When the core stabilizing muscles of the pelvic cradle are fatigued, every explosive drive and rapid change of direction threatens to disrupt the body's alignment. This constant, high-speed stress dramatically raises the stakes for her physical recovery. Can the franchise's support systems protect a player whose greatness depends on movements that constantly push her body to the absolute edge? The conversation surrounding these physical setbacks inevitably moves beyond the training room of a single franchise. It forces an evaluation of the entire WNBA environment. When an athlete carrying the commercial weight of an entire league experiences a recurring cycle of soft tissue issues, the question is no longer just about her recovery, but about the broader system designed to protect her. Is the league's medical and performance infrastructure truly built to sustain a marquee player under this level of physical and schedule pressure? Currently, the response to these setbacks often appears reactive, focused on managing the immediate symptoms of a strain rather than proactively mapping the entire kinetic chain. When outside experts must publicly point out these structural risks, it naturally raises questions about the depth of the internal support systems. Clark's situation serves as an institutional stress test, challenging a growing league to match its rapid business expansion with an equally advanced system of athlete preservation. Medical clearance is not the same as structural readiness. A player can return to the court, execute transition passes, and hit deep three-pointers while still silently compensating for an underlying imbalance. The real test of an elite athletic system is not whether a star can bypass pain, but how it rebuilds complete movement patterns before the next strain occurs. Under the 2026 Collective Bargaining Agreement, the WNBA established a baseline medical standard mandating that every team carry 2 certified athletic trainers, 2 team physicians, and 1 strength coach. But as the physical and commercial demands on players intensify, does this baseline suffice? True protection requires a shift toward long-term care principles, deliberate movement rebuilding, access to independent second medical opinions, strict minute protection, and comprehensive recovery planning. Ultimately, the question is whether the league's competitive urgency is outrunning its capacity for care. Generational talent demands more than standard protocols. It requires a generational support system built to last. The real test isn't her talent, but her durability within a system built for the past. As physical compensation risks her future, the WNBA faces a choice: modernize athlete protection or gamble with its greatest asset. Share your thoughts below.